Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Huzur says that Allah Almighty says to the believers that your motto and objective of life should be fastabikul khairat, that you try to vie with one another in good deeds, and always keep that in mind. And then those who perform good deeds and those who do good works, Allah Almighty has also declared them as the best of the creation, as Allah Almighty says, Inna allazina amanu wa amilu salihate ulaika hum khairul bariya. That those people, certainly those people who believe and perform good deeds, these are those people who are the best of the creation. The promised Messiah ﷺ, explaining this point, in brief, he says in one place that a person should perform his duties, and one should try to excel in performing the good deeds. So therefore, to increase in performing the good deeds and to perform nice things and to perform the virtues and deeds, good deeds, it is something which makes a believer a true believer, and for that we must always strive for that. For our guidance in the light of the Quran and the Hadith, the promised Messiah ﷺ has explained in great detail, and some statements are there. For example, that what is the piety, virtue, what is virtue, and how you can acquire that virtue. And for performing the good deed, the belief in God, why is it essential? And what should be the standard of faith, belief? And this standard, how is it possible to raise it further? And through which means we can perform good deeds? And what are the various aspects of the good deed? What sort of deeds are there? And then how Allah Almighty rewards these good deeds and the people who do it. And all these things are mentioned in his statements, that to use the permissible things to a certain degree is a virtue, is a good deed. And if you excel in that one, then it decreases the level of piety. And also he has mentioned that a mu'min, a believer, how much he should expand the circle of his goodness and good deeds. In short, he has explained the wisdom of good deeds and the subject of its real essence, and he has explained the subject from various angles. Regarding this subject, I am going to present some extracts from the writing of the promised Messiah, explaining this point, that what is the piety, what is the need, a good deed, and to say that a good deed apparently may be very small, it makes a person recipient of the blessing of Allah. He says that the piety, the good deed, is like a step ladder to go to God Almighty and to find out the reality of Islam. And one has to get the pleasure of Allah Almighty, one has to attain that. So in that case, the good deeds are the ladder for that. But remember, what is the good deed? And he says that Satan, on every path, it's always standing there to mislead them and tries to mislead the people. For example, there is extra bread in the evening, and a rich person is there, the food is prepared plentiful or more than required. So in the morning, it's the stale meat is there, which was not consumed last night. And the next day, exactly at the time of the food, when very good foods are there available for him, he has not taken even a morsel. Somebody on the door, a beggar is there, and he asks for some food, some bread. So then that person, this stale bread may be given to this beggar. And while there was very freshly prepared food in front of him, so will that be a good deed? The stale bread was going to be there, and the rich people, they were not going to eat that. So he says that Allah Almighty says, وَيُطِمُونَ الطَّعَامَ, Allah Almighty says, عَلَى حُبِّهِ مِسْكِينًا وَيَتِيمًا وَأَسِيرًا, that at this point should be noted that ta'am, the word ta'am for food, it is applicable for good food, and that means that food which you like. The stale and stale food is not really called ta'am. It's not a food. That is, according to Arabic word ta'am, it does not mean that. And in the same plate where you have put the fresh and good, properly cooked food, and you have not yet started there, and at the call of the beggar, if you take some portion of that, a good food, well prepared, and you take something out of that and then you give to the poor person, if you give that to that poor person, beggar, then this is the good deed, and not this one that you yourself enjoy the good, freshly prepared, and the stale meat left over of the last night that you give to the beggar. So going into this much depth, only then a person can perform and attain the right good deed, the real good deed. Therefore, always the effort should be to be there to go for the right deed, and how it can be achieved. This good deed, this cannot be created without the perfect belief in Allah Almighty. Explaining this point, the promised Messiah ﷺ says that for the true virtue and piety, it is necessary that one should have full faith in God, because the ordinary officers, they do not know what the people do inside the house and what is behind that. But if the belief in God is there, and the belief is such that Allah Almighty watches over each and everything, these apparent commandments are there, the government is there, their agencies are there, they do not know what's happening inside. But Allah Almighty knows that, and this faith should be there, that Allah Almighty knows each and everything. Everything is in His knowledge. He knows the unseen. And He said that although nobody mentions with his tongue the good deed or not, but whatever he keeps in the heart, for that, and he has got no fear of the punishment from God, and worldly governments are nowhere there, that the fear of that in the day and night, and brightness and darkness, and in isolation and in meeting, and in the house or the market, that sort of fear is there. Sometimes people are in hiding and they perform deeds, sitting in various places, in various conditions, and he knows that no one else watches over him, so this fear is not there. So because of lack of this fear, he commits that wrong thing. Except Allah Almighty, He knows everything. So therefore, if you have to perform the real good deed, then the belief in God is very essential. He said, in order to reform your morals, you have to believe in such a being who in every condition, at all times, is the guardian over him and watches over him, and Allah Almighty knows what you do and what you have in your hearts, and that is, apart from Allah Almighty, nobody else is there. So if this sort of belief is there, and the belief of this standard is there, and Allah Almighty is always being remembered, only in that case a person can perform the real deed. And then regarding the true virtue, he says that the meaning of taqwa is to abstain from the very fine things of bad things. And piety is not only this thing that you abstain from. He says that I do not usurp the right, I have not stolen the property of other, or I haven't acquired anything through unlawful means. That is not virtue. And if he has not broken into the house, he has not stolen any property, and he has not put ugly eye, or he has not committed adultery. So regarding those people who know Allah Almighty, this is a matter to be laughed about, because if a person does all these things, so then he is going to be punished. So this is no virtue and no good thing which is a virtue in the eyes of those who know Allah Almighty. But the true piety is to serve the mankind, and in the way of Allah Almighty, perfect. One should show absolutely loyalty in it, and one should be ready to lay down his life. Therefore Allah Almighty says, Inna Allaha mallazina taqaw wallazina hum muhsinun. Mallazina, Hazur repeats the verse once again. That means that Allah Almighty is with those people who abstain from the bad deeds, and also along with that they perform good deeds. And Allah Almighty mentioned that remember this thing, that only to abstain from vices is not a piety, a noble deed. If somebody says that I don't do these bad things, so therefore it is good, unless along with that he also performs the good deeds. There might be many people who have never committed adultery, who have not killed anybody, who has not committed a theft, they have not robbed anything, but despite that, in the way of Allah Almighty, they haven't shown any example of truthfulness and loyalty to God. And in the way of Allah, for the sake of Allah, for the pleasure of Allah Almighty, and following the commandments of Allah Almighty, they haven't performed anything good. No sacrifice has been made. So despite the fact that so many other vices, they have abstained from that. Or they have not served the human being. They have not given the due rights to Allah, not to the fellow being. And in this way, no good action has been taken on their part. Maybe that he has not done something bad, but he has not served the mankind and not discharged the right duty towards them. So then this is not a nobility, not a good thing. And that person would be very foolish who would be presenting this thing as good deeds, because this is not right. Only with this sort one cannot become among those people who are the friends of Allah. And then regarding this, he further says that this is not a matter of pride, that one should be happy with this point, that he does not commit adultery, or he has not killed, or he has not committed a theft. This is not something superior, that one should be proud of not committing the bad things. This is not something important, that I have not committed anything bad. Actually, he knows that if he commits the theft, his hand will be cut off. Or according to the current law, he will go into the prison. He would be kept if he commits a theft, and then he will be punished for that. So this is not an excellence to abstain from that. So this is the fear of the punishment. So then, according to Allah Almighty, Islam is not the name of this thing, that one should abstain from bad things. But unless and until he abandons the bad deeds and tries to commit the good things, he cannot be come into that category. And the reality of the teaching of Islam is that one should increase one's spirituality and improve your pious life, religious life. If you just abandon the bad things, but the spiritual life cannot improve. By abandoning the bad things to increase in spirituality, that is the thing. That is required. Otherwise, in the spiritual life, you will not be alive. Then you will be just like a dead person, spiritually. And these good deeds, they are like food. So as a person cannot live without food, similarly, if a person does not commit the good deeds, he cannot live spiritually. So this is when you increase in your faith. And what should be the standard of belief in Allah? this standard can only be achieved when inside and outside of human body, human being would be the same. So as you have this belief that a poison is very dangerous, and anybody who takes that, he dies. As you believe this thing, that the snake, if you put the hand into the hole of the snake, then the snake can bite you. And similarly, the faith should be there regarding the existence of Allah, that if I commit something wrong, that Allah Almighty is watching over me, I will be punished by Him. And Allah Almighty says that He knows and watches over everything. And each and every action of a human being is in the knowledge of Allah, and everything indicates. If a person believes that Allah Almighty is watching over me all the time, so actually the pious person is that whose inside and outside is the same, and whose heart and outside condition, he is the one. He walks on the earth just like angels. If the inside and outside is the same, so then that person, the standard of his piety would be just like an angel, as if he has become an angel. And an atheist, he cannot achieve to this type of belief. His apparent actions might be good, but he cannot reach this status, because somewhere in his heart something will be there which will be creating bad things, and maybe he performs some simple morals, but certainly that his condition inside is not like that, and that will be the weakness. And all the results, they are through the actions, because of the action. So when somebody recognizes the hole of the snake, then he never puts his finger into that, because we know that there is an element of danger, and this is the poison is very destructive. So one believes in that one, and whenever we believe that this poison is very dangerous, so we will never have a sip of that one, and one should abstain from that. And the faith being very strong, what is the condition? He says that always remember that the root of every goodness is to believe in Allah Almighty. The more and if the faith is weak, similarly the actions also become weak. But when the faith is strong, and Allah, one believes in Allah Almighty with all His attributes, so according to that, a strange pious change is there in the actions of that person. A human being, if he believes that Allah Almighty is the mighty, He has got all power, He is all knowing, and He is watching over me everywhere, so he says, so then in this, as a result of that, a very strange type, very unique type of a change is brought about, and all the actions of that person become good instead of bad deeds, and one always is inclined to perform good deeds. And the one who believes in God, he cannot have the power to commit a sin. The one who truly believes in Allah, and on the other side he might be committing sin, it is impossible. Because this faith, it cuts down on his inclination towards bad thing. If somebody's eyes are taken out, so then how can he put a filthy eyes on somebody without the eyes? And if the hands are cut, so then those sins which are related to that, those limbs, the hand, how can he commit that? Similarly, when a person is in a state of the satisfied soul, so then satisfied soul makes him blind, and the power of committing any sin through the eyes is not there. He sees, but he does not put a filthy eyes, and he does not look at anything with a bad eye. And because that sight of eyes is taken away, and the filthy eye and the filthy faculty of to put filthy eyes and bad eyes, as which is not permissible of his selfish thoughts, they are not there. He has the ears, but he is deaf, because he cannot listen to anything bad. And similarly, all his sexual and other faculties of moral, they are all these powers which can possibly lead him to commit a sin, there is a death imposed upon them, and he becomes like a dead person, and he is completely under the command and will of Allah Almighty. He cannot take even a step beside that. This is the condition. This condition will be there. If this condition is there, when the true faith in God Almighty is there, all these conditions will be created when you have a firm and full belief in Allah. And the result of that is that he is given the total satisfaction. And this is that objective which should be really the objective of a human being. This is the target. This we have to keep in front. And that all types of bad things, we have to take it away from our mind, from our heart, from our eyes and ears. We should completely take it away. And he says that our community needs this thing. And in order to get the total satisfaction of heart, the total good actions are required. He says that the first duty of our community is that they should try to acquire the true belief in Allah Almighty. This is the target which he has given to all of us. That true belief should be there in Allah. And then the true actions will be able to be performed. And then, Fastabikul Khairat, we will be coming in those categories. We will be trying to excel in good things. And we will be counted among the best creations. Then another aspect of the piety, good deed, he explains that there are two things essential for a human being. One is to avoid the bad deeds, and one should run towards the good deeds. And there are two aspects of good thing. One is to abandon the bad thing, and then the second is to acquire the good thing. To leave the bad thing, that is one aspect of that, and the other aspect is to do the good thing. And by abandoning the bad things, one cannot become a perfect man. The abandoning the bad things does not give the perfection. There is a weakness in the faith. And unless there is another element of giving some good thing to other people and do kindness to other people, and when you have both the things, then your faith is complete. And that indicates that how much a change is required, and all these stages are required when you have a firm belief in all the attributes of Allah Almighty. You should have the full knowledge of that. Unless and until you have it, no one can abstain from vices. And in order to acquire the attributes of Allah Almighty, a person should always be reading the Holy Quran and read its commandments mentioned therein. And they say to give some good benefit to other people, that's another high thing. But some people fear the kings and rulers. Because of that, they do not fear the Allah Almighty, but still they are afraid of these people, because they really have the weakness in the faith of Allah Almighty. So why do the people fear the law of the government? This is the point to be understood. And they commit bad things, and they are not the good deeds. And this has been mentioned before, that when the weaknesses are there, that is the time when the weakness in faith is there. If the people know Allah Almighty, all-knowing and present everywhere, if they believe all these things, but practically he is denying these attributes, so therefore many bad deeds are committed by the person. And many things are such from the good things which he is unable to do because the lack of faith. And then the perfect belief in Allah Almighty. After that, what are the ways of abstaining the vices? He has explained that the stage of avoiding these sins is covered when you have the faith in Allah. And then the second stage should be that then they should follow those paths which are followed by the chosen people of Allah Almighty. The first, the belief in Allah, and then to follow the paths of those people and to find out those virtues which was adopted by those people who are very close to Allah, like the prophets and the righteous people, and good deeds which they follow. So that is the one way. that by following that path, these people got the blessing of. So you can find out this way that one should find that Allah Almighty, what sort of treatment was given to these people. The very first stage is to abstain from the vices, and then through the manifestation of the divine attributes, because and he finishes the enemies. So similarly, avoiding all these bad things is one step. And the second is the aspect of the spiritual manifestation of the divine attributes. And unless strength is acquired by God Almighty, which is called the spirit of the purity, this pure spirit, unless that is granted there, it is given by God Almighty. And as soon as it comes, it gives a satisfaction to the heart of the people. One develops a love for the good things. And this is the spiritual manifestation of his attribute. So then one is drawn to each and every good thing, and he is never turning to bad things. And then he gets the satisfaction. And this is the action of the righteous people, that should be followed and that should be seen. And look at the example of the prophets. And those good things which other people do it, considering it as a burden upon them, this person is inclined to these things with a feeling of love. Just if a tasty food is there, then the child and everybody takes it with joy. And similarly, when the Holy Spirit descends upon the people, then these things are just like with good fragrance and taste. And then these good points are seen by this person. So he runs towards that. And even the thought of a bad thing is something which he shuns. And we cannot truly express all this thing in the words. There is a strange feeling, there is a satisfaction of heart, which cannot be, it is not so easy to mention all this thing in words. So this is what is really felt by heart. And when you feel it, then you really appreciate it, what it is. And then new and new blessings are come upon that person. And one should not consider this as the height of his progress. And sometimes the people becomes like this, that sometime he starts crying and weeping in the prayer, sometime in Ramzan in the prayers. Sometime people have this feeling that their heart becomes very tender and they start crying. So that should not be taken as something permanent. These are temporary things. Sometimes one example of this temporary weeping is that when a person reads a novel and he reads something, there are many people when they are reading novels, then they start crying and weeping. And there are some stories mentioned there and some incidents are mentioned there. So he knows that it's a fictitious tale and story, and despite that he reads that one. So if simply crying and weeping is the real satisfaction, if that had been the root of that, so then from that there would not have been anybody who would be better in become this field as compared with the European people. There are millions of copies of the novels, and many million people, they weep and cry when they read those stories and the dramas. And they also mention, they just mention something and they affect the emotions of these people and they start crying. This is not the spiritual taste. And the spiritual belief is that when a person forgets the bad things and does everything good for the sake of Allah. And then the sections of the good deeds has also been explained by the promised Messiah. First he mentioned two aspects: to abandon the partnership with Allah Almighty and to perform good deeds. To abandon the bad things and to perform the good deeds. There are two things further, that the more one commits the good deeds, there are two parts of that. One is which is obligation, and the other is which is optional. There are two parts of the goodness. One is obligatory, one is optional. The obligatory things which are made bound upon him, like paying back the debt. This is a obligation. One has to pay it back. Or to do something in response to a good thing, this is again an obligation. Apart from obligation, there are certain optional things which are additional to that one. And if you do something which is done by a person, like for example a person performs a good deed, then in response to that you show another good deed and you repay his kindness, and that is a sort of obligation. This is like those things which make the good action as complete and perfect. And these obligatory things, these optional things are those which make the obligatory things as perfect. Referring to one hadith, and I have to mention this, that the friends of Allah Almighty are those that the completion of their obligations is through the nawafil, through the optional things, and their religious obligations are made complete when they perform additional virtues. For example, apart from zakat, if they give other types of charity and sadaqah, Allah Almighty becomes their friend, and Allah Almighty says that they are so close in Allah Almighty with friendship that I become his hand and feet. And just like that, as it is mentioned in these, I become his tongue through which he talks. When a person increases in faith and he increases in the faith in Allah, then for the sake of Allah, he performs the good deed for the sake of Allah. Then Allah Almighty enables him to do good deeds more, and he is blessed with that. And regarding that, he says that in Islam, this is the natural law of Allah, that one goodness breeds another goodness. And he says that I remember in Tazkiratul Awliya, the mention of the friends of Allah, a person who used to worship fire. He was 90-year-old. Just by chance, there was heavy rain, and he went up onto the top of the house, and he put the grain for the birds, and he went up to the top and he put the feed to the birds. Another elderly person, Musliman, he was a Muslim, he said that, what are you doing, old man? He replied that my brother, for 6-7 days continuous rain is there, and I put this feed to the birds, to the sparrows. He said that you are doing something useless, futile thing. So you are a non-believer, and what reward you are going to get as a result of this thing that you are doing, because you are a non-believer? The old man replied that I will definitely get the reward of that. I have full faith in Allah, so I am going to get the reward. So anyway, the nature was pious. This was the voice of his heart. He said, I will get the reward. And that old person says that when I went to Hajj, then what do I see from a distance? That the same old man was performing tawaf, who used to give the feed to the sparrows. He was performing the Hajj. And I was very much surprised to see him. And when I moved close, and he spoke immediately. Before my questioning, he said that, look, this feed which I used to give, did it go waste? Has not Allah Almighty give me the reward? This action, this Hajj which I am performing today, that is the result of that feed which I used to give to the birds. So Allah Almighty blesses in this way. And then he says that one should think that Allah Almighty has not even let the good thing done by a non-believer go waste. So is he going to let these virtues of the pious people go waste? And then he again remembers another thing. Some companion said to the Holy Prophet ﷺ that during my time of disbelief I have done so many good things. Will I be rewarded? When I was a non-believer, I used to perform good deeds and give charities. Is there reward for me? Is there any reward for me? The Holy Prophet ﷺ, that those charities, they have actually become the means of your becoming Muslim. And this is the result of that today you are a Muslim. Then describing this thing that one should use the permissible thing within a certain limit. He says that the root of goodness is that the worldly things and the sexual things which are permissible, they are also not to be taken before a certain limit. The food, Allah Almighty has made it lawful. But if a person eats day and night the food and enjoys it and does it like that, So that is not right. Otherwise, these taste of the worldly things, that these tastes which Allah Almighty has put it there, that the people should eat because they are tasty, and his energy should be supplemented, and so that Allah Almighty, the person can also perform the obligations from God Almighty, that the health should not become weak. The example of that is something like this, that the one who is the person who is a horse-driven carriage, when he takes the carriage for a few miles, then he give him the brake and gives that horse something to eat, so that he can recover the tiredness that he had and so this the prophets, they have taken some part from the world. The prophets, they also eat and enjoy the good things, and the taste, the enjoyment, they do have it, and the marriage, the progeny, children, and worldly things, amenities, all these things are there attached with the prophets. So whatever share they have taken from this world, that is because of that, because a very big task was entrusted to him. If Allah Almighty had not given them the help and strength, they would not have been able to do this. So just like a owner of the horse-driven carriage, he feeds the horse to make it fresh and energetic, so full of energy. So the same thing. So some people, so these pious people, they just have this food for this purpose, that they may be using this energy for the religious service. So Hadhrat Khalifatul Massih once he mentioned that somebody said that the promised Messiah sometime enjoys the plow, the special dish of the rice, and Hadhrat Khalifa said that I have never read anywhere that good food is prohibited for the prophets of Allah. So sometimes the people do criticize this thing, and even to have the bad food is the piety. Some people say this is wrong. So this is the explanation which he gave, and he mentioned the Holy Prophet ﷺ said that I eat good food, I have good clothes, I have marriages, and I do so many things. So you should follow my example, just as I do. Anyway, the Masih Maud, promised Messiah, says that this was not the style of the prophets, that they used to be completely lost in that. That was not the way. Indulgence is no bad thing. A bad person, he does whatever he likes and he eats whatever he likes. Similarly, if a righteous person would do like that, so the path of righteousness will not open up. The worldly people, they eat it for the worldly sake. But a righteous person, they are not righteous people. But a righteous person, if he does like that, then the paths of Allah Almighty will not open. A person who takes up this step for Allah, Allah Almighty definitely have regard for that person. Allah Almighty says, "Yadelu huwa akrabu littaqwa," that in the food and enjoyment, worldly enjoyments, there should be a balance. And not only this much, that one should not go for adultery and stealing, but one should not exceed the permissible limit. Even in those permissible things, one should not exceed the limit. This is also taqwa, and this is also something which is good. And then explaining the point there, that and the relationship with other people, with the rulers, with the family members and relatives, he says that our teaching is that you treat everyone nicely and obey the rulers, because they are appointed for this purpose, and the rule of the government should be followed, because they are performing their duty for the rights of the citizens, and also to nice treatment with the family members, because there are rules, obligations towards the family members. And those people who are opponent and those are committing associative partner with Allah Almighty, so don't follow them in goodness, don't offer the prayer along with them or behind them. Those people who issue the edicts against us and they do bad things, we should not offer the prayer behind these people. But however, generally speaking, good treatment should be there. But good treatment must be done, however opposed they may be. This is our principle, that do good thing to everyone. The one who cannot do good, what reward he is expecting in the hereafter? So one should always be having good feelings and intention for other people, but in religious matters one should safeguard, just like the physician regarding all the patients, whether he's a Hindu or a Christian, he diagnoses and he treats. Similarly, in performing the good deeds, the general principle should be followed to be kind to everyone. And if he says that in the time of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, the enemies were killed, the answer to that is that these people, because of their mischief and their actions, they had become criminal because of killing without any reason, and they were persecuting the Muslims, and that killing was as a punishment because they were the criminals, not for this purpose only, that they denied the truth. So if the refusal is simply done there and the intention of mischief is not there, so then they do not get any punishment here in this life. And how much we should expand the circle of goodness, regarding that he says that the circle of goodness and kindness is very vast, and don't deny this to anyone, and don't be only attaching it to the believers. So I say that be kind to all the creation of Allah Almighty, whether Hindu, Muslim or anybody. I never like the statement of those people who contain this kindness only to their own people. They have some beliefs that if you put your hand in a very dangerous thing, and whatever the things you get it, this is some sort of thinking of the non-Ahmadis, that if there is a sticky thing you put into that pot and take it out, and then you put it in the hand somewhere where there are some seeds there. So they say that how many the seeds are attached to that one, that is something like this. So this sort of things, foolish things, these things, they have given very much harm to the people, and the people have become very beastly as a result of thing. But this is the state of Muslims. I tell you repeatedly that don't restrict the circle of your kindness to the people, and follow that teaching which Allah Almighty has given. Inna Allah ya'muru bil adli wal ihsana wa ita'i dhil qurba. That first you always keep in mind to be kind to other people. The one who does good to you, do kindness. But even more than that, you do more. That is the ihsan. The status of ihsan is more than that. And this is a great goodness. And the person who does the goodness, he should never ever mention it again to that person. And they love those people just without any intention, without any selfish cause, just like the mother looks after the child. And she does not expect any reward for the kindness to the child. The natural inclination is there, that she sacrifices all the comforts for the benefit of the child. If a king is there to command the mother that you don't feed the child, and even if the child dies, and the mother will not be punished at all if the children dies, because though milk was given. But will there be any mother doing like that? Certainly not. And rather she will be rebuking that king, that why he has given this command. So the piety should be in a natural way. That stage should be given. And when a person comes to the highest point in a natural way, then it becomes complete. So the good deeds are such that always one should be thinking about kindness and goodness. And then he says, in a natural, natural instinct should be there to perform the good deeds. And this is the intention of Allah Almighty, that if you want to become truly a servant of Allah Almighty, then you take all these goodness in a natural way to that stage. When you reach those good things to that status, you are not complete in your faith. And then he says, remember that Allah Almighty likes the good deeds very much, and he wishes that kindness should be shown to his creation. If he had liked the bad things, then he would have mentioned that. But Allah Almighty is far above and far more glorious than this thing. Allah Almighty enable us that we should always be performing the good deeds for the sake of Allah Almighty. And Allah Almighty, He has given the command, Fastabikul Khairat, that we vie with one another in goodness, so we may be able to attain this high status. After the prayer, I would be leading some janaza prayer in absentia. The first one is Muhammad Hamid Mahmood Atif Sahib Murabbi Silsila, who is, and he passed away on 22nd of October. He passed away. Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi rajiun. The Dr. Abdul Rahim Sahib, he was the nephew of a companion of the promised Messiah, Abdul Rahim Dar Sahib, and his father, Professor Muhammad Ahmad Atif Sahib, Masood Ahmad Atif Sahib, who from 55 to 86 he had been serving in the Talim al-Islam College. Masood Atif Sahib, he was a son of, he got his education in Rabwa, and then he got admission in Jamia, and then he got the Shahid degree. First he wanted to go into the army, but on the basis of a dream, he left college and he came to Jamia and got the admission and got the Shahid degree from there. And then he was given the status of Murabbi, and by the grace of Allah, from wife, apart from that, there are 2 children. They are getting education, and one is in Madrasatul Hifz. He is memorizing the Quran. Masood Atif Sahib, in 1991, he was appointed in various places in Pakistan. He learnt French language. In Namal University in Islamabad, he got the admission. And 97, he was in Ivory Coast. He was sent as a missionary there. And 2002, he served there in Ivory Coast. And from up to 2016 in Burkina Faso he worked, and then because he was not feeling well, he was called back to Pakistan. His wife says that that he taught me the French so that the dealing with the people should be nice, and it could be helpful in the training of the ladies over there. He was very cheerful. Many of his fellow friends have written that he was a very jolly fellow. He was very intelligent and very humorous and respectful to his colleagues and friends. In obedience, he was very much obedient. This spirit was there. He was selfless person. Allah Almighty exalt his status and also give solace and comfort to his children and enable them to continue his good deeds. The second one is Ali Saeed Musa Sahib, Sadr Jamaat Ahmadiyya Tanzania, who at the age of 67, he passed away in Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi rajiun. In 1950, he was born in Tanzania. In 1980, he got admission in Islamabad University and got the degree, and degree in economics, and he was working in various government departments. Hadhrat Khalifatul asked him to translate the Holy Quran, but because of his other engagements, it took very long time. And then Hadhrat Khalifatul said that this will take 30 years in this way, and he was very much worried about that. Anyway, after listening to this instruction, Ali Saidi Sahib's, he became very emotional, and he promised that he is going to complete this translation. So he left other things and concentrated on it, and within 5 years he completed the translation. In 2006, he was appointed Amir of Tanzania, and Burundi and Malawi and Mozambique communities were also under his control. And during his period of Amarat, a secondary school was opened, and also Jamaat acquired a big piece of land. He was very dedicated and pious and very fearful, God-fearing person. He was having close relation with the Khilafat. He has left, apart from the wife, 3 daughters and 3 sons. Allah Almighty enable all of them to carry out their good deeds and exalt his status. The third janaza is of Nusrat Begum Sadaka Sahiba of Rabwa. On 16th and 17th, and the night before, in Tahir Heart Institute in Rabwa, she passed away. She was Abdul Mumin Tahir Sahib, in charge of her. He was the mother of him, and he had great devotion with the Khilafat, and she was very much against the setting up of partners and dependence on Allah Almighty with good intention. And she used to hide his good deeds, and very modestly she used to do like that. Her grandfather was a companion of the promised Messiah, Maulana Burhanuddin Sahib. Through him, he did the Bai'at, and then he came to Qadian at his suggestion. She was very fond of teaching the Quran, recitation of the Quran correctly. And Khalifatul Masih Salis, when he introduced the system that elderly, ladies who are not cannot read, so then some ladies of 70 years age, they learnt how to read the Quran, and also they learnt the meaning after that. And none of the girls also read the Holy Quran, and also the books of the promised Messiah. She was very fond of that. She had memorized so many poems, and from Kalam-e Mahmud, Durasmin, Duryadan, many verses she remembered. And his son writes that Mahmud ki Ameen, she used to recite with great heart feelings and sentiments, and she used to cry. And those people who used to certain innovations or a lack of belief in Allah, so she struggled, and the bad ceremonies and innovations from these people, he encouraged them and asked them to leave these things. She used to offer the prayer with dedication. The Holy Quran was used to do very regularly. She used to perform. She was a Musia. There are sons. One is Momin Sahib, as I said, and the 4 other members are there. They are also serving the community. Altogether 6 sons were there. Allah Almighty may exalt the status of the departed soul, and all the children enable them to follow in her example.